Hi, my name is Taylor Silverduke, registered dietitian specializing in celiac disease, and I'm fidgeting with this like weird magnetic thing because I have ADHD, and this is what I'm fidgeting with today. Someone asked me this excellent question. Pull it up on the screen. They said, I'd like to know about this a lot more. What if someone with celiac works at a restaurant that makes pizza? So, long time ago, I used to work in a bakery. I was actually the opener for the bakery, and this was like one of my first jobs as a teenager. This was back when I was early in my celiac diagnosis. I was excessively strict. I lived in a dedicated gluten-free home. Couldn't imagine ever living in a shared home like I do now. And I worked in a bakery. For some reason, like I was being excessively strict in every aspect of my celiac management, but I was like, sure, I'll work in a bakery. That'll be fine. So if you're not familiar, I worked in a Panera in the United States. It's like a bakery coffee shop thing. And every morning, my responsibility was to get up at the crack of dawn, 4 a.m., and while the bakers were still baking, I would be setting up the bakery shelves. So I would be putting all the baked goods away. I would be slicing some bread. I would be making sure like the bakery's ready to go when our customers come in. And then I would slice bread for people, get their pastries for them, that kind of thing. And over time, over a couple of months, I started getting really, really sick, and I would actually start throwing up on shift. And it got to be like a couple weeks in, I'm throwing up on shift, and I just am at my wit's end, having to run to the bathroom to throw up. And you're not, I mean, like in a food service industry, like that's a no-no. Throwing up on shift is a no-no. But we knew it was because of my celiac, so like, you know, looking the other way. But at the end of it, I was just like, I can't do this anymore, and I had to put in my resignation, and I just didn't come back. My manager was on the same page as me. They understood. Like, I was just getting so sick, it was just not an option for me anymore. So going back to this question, this person wants to know about this a lot more. They want to know, what if someone works at a restaurant that makes pizza? So I just shared my experience working in a bakery, but pizzerias are going to be very similar, simply because it's just both of those restaurants, flour and bread is like being slung in the air. It's like everywhere, right? So what does that mean for people who have celiac disease? So if you're watching this video, the first thing I want to make abundantly clear is I'm not your celiac dietitian. I'm not your provider. I have no idea what's going on with you. So if anything I say is different from what your celiac specialized provider says, consult with them, talk to them before you make any changes. They're more aware of your unique circumstances than I am. But do I think that you absolutely have to quit a job where they're slinging dough for pizza or they're baking? I don't necessarily think so. I think that there's probably situations where someone can get away with that. I do know of wheat farmers who have like specific masks that they put on and suits, and they're able to keep themselves safe, that also have celiac, that are able to do their jobs. So I imagine the same is true for working in a bakery, working in a pizzeria. But this would be quite the hazard. This would be quite the risk of potential gluten exposure, and there would be a lot of things that I would want to talk with you about reducing that. I would want to know more about what your job is. Are you the person that's slinging the dough, touching the flour, throwing it up in the air? Are you wearing the apron that's also probably covered in flour? Or are you like, you know, farther away from the kitchen, and what's your role in that place? Because for me, like, I was handling the bread, I was handling the baked goods, and I was working directly next to the baker. So it was a pretty high contact situation that was making me sick. Something else to note is, you know, masks have been being used a lot more given the situations that have happened. There could be masks that would be doing a good enough job at removing any of the particles and the dust and the stuff that's in the air that you could be inhaling that's contaminating you. So it is something to consider. I feel like I really can't give specifics on how to navigate this, aside from work with your celiac provider, come up with a plan that you both feel good about, and then ultimately you're really going to want to make sure you're staying on top of your celiac follow-up testing, and you're making sure that it's not coming back elevated, it's not coming back stuck at an elevated number, it's not going back up, and it's still going down, and it's indicating you're doing a good job at avoiding gluten, because that's like the biggest factor and the biggest risk. And say you're someone with celiac who's asymptomatic, or your symptoms aren't super noticeable, you're going to want other information. Even if you are symptomatic, you're going to want other information that's supporting that this is in fact due to gluten, and then you're able to make an informed choice on whether or not it's a good decision for you to continue working in this environment or not, if it's something that you do want to do. But I would encourage most celiacs to consider right off the bat some other position than working in a bakery surrounded by flour, or working in a pizzeria surrounded by flour. Other restaurant situations, I believe, are going to be a lot lower risk, simply because, it's not like a high scale, high volume baking situation, slinging flour and dough situation. Maybe they are doing some baking, maybe there may be some flour thrown up into the air when someone's doing some like mixing for a dough, but it's not going to be at the high scale that it's going to be at in a restaurant. And you're likely not going to be the one that's like directly involved in that area. This is where we're starting to get into like cross-contact information, cross-contact research realm. And so this is where I also want to encourage you, if you have not been properly trained, if you have not had a celiac dietitian sit you down and explain to you the risks of cross-contact and how to manage those, and explain to you the research so that you can make an informed choice on what's going to make the most sense for you when it comes to avoiding cross-contact with gluten, please consider signing up for my celiac safety course. It's a 6-module course that is self-paced, taught by me, a celiac dietitian who's been living with celiac for over 10 years, and we dive into everything avoiding gluten in the United States at a foundational level to make sure you have a strong safety foundation when you're going out into the world and eating at home or at a friend's home or working in a restaurant. So in this class, we're covering how to make sure your food's gluten-free, supplements are gluten-free, medications are gluten-free, when to consider gluten-free beauty products, as well as we're looking at cross-contact, setting up your home, making sure that you know what is and isn't actually safe to share, how to remove traces of gluten, where traces of gluten might be, all of that. It's in that celiac safety course. So if no celiac dietitian has taught this to you, and you're feeling like you're kind of flailing, you're kind of piecing together what you can find on the internet and hoping that that's good enough, and you're not sure what you're doing and you want some more clarity from a celiac dietitian who's also been living with celiac for over 10 years, that class is available. It's linked. That course actually is available. It's linked down below. But hopefully this was insightful and helpful to talk about, celiacs working in pizzerias and bakeries and what that can look like. It looks complicated. It looks difficult. It looks like something I would ideally not have any of my celiac clients doing, but if it's something that you absolutely have to do, or if it's something where you really need to pay your bills and until you can find another job you got to stick with it, I would buy a really good mask, put it on, try to get as much fresh air as possible, try to avoid the areas, the high contact areas where they're really slinging the dough, they're really rolling out that flour, or if you're in that position and you've been diagnosed with celiac, see if you can be transferred somewhere else because of your celiac diagnosis until you're able to find a safer job, because it is very high risk, high cross contact. And if you're someone who's like, rolling pizza and making pizza is like one of my passions, or baking is one of my passions, and I don't know if I want to give this job up, that's something that you're going to want to have a really detailed conversation with your provider about, to figure out what are the actual steps you can take to make sure that this job is staying safe for you, and or can we start to look for gluten-free pizzeria jobs, gluten-free bakery jobs. Can maybe, if there's no gluten-free options in your area, can we start to look at you being the person who's offering that in your area? Things to consider. All of that said, if you found this helpful and you want more videos from a celiac dietitian who's been living with celiac for over 10 years, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button if you found it helpful, and other than that, I will see you when I see you.